Welcome to Leadership and Life Chat with your hosts, me, Becky Ames.
And me, Mark Curtis. In each episode, we'll be illustrating how success in leadership is inextricably linked with success in life.
Whether it's leadership in business, society, family or friends, we're all leaders.
Using our experiences and a range of expert guests, we'll share secrets to boosting your health, wealth and self.
So let's get on with the show. So today, Mark, I thought we could talk about music, a topic I know you love. But the reason I want to talk about it is because I was listening to a podcast, and I know you have too, by Andrew Huberman, his Huberman Lab podcast, on how music can motivate us and also lots of other things. And I thought, it's really interesting because I see people who claim that they work better if they're listening to music. Some people don't like any music at all. There's really mixed views on it. And then Andrew explores the science behind it, really. So I thought today, if we could chat around this and really how we feel about it and what we're seeing in the workplace as leaders as well, and how we could perhaps help our teams to utilise this knowledge to really get the most out of it.
Great topic, Becky. It's been something which has rumbled around the offices for years, isn't it? About should people be allowed to listen to it? Should they be able to have the radio on? Should they have the headsets in? Is it distracting? How does it impact colleagues? We've talked about this endlessly, and that's before we even think about our own use of music, maybe when we're cycling or running, and what works for us, what doesn't. So I think we all inherently know that music does something to us when we listen to it. It has a real big emotional effect on us, doesn't it? So it stands to reason. And as you say, Andrew Huberman really covers the neuroscience behind it, as he is a neuroscientist. But I think we all it's sort of built into us, isn't it? We understand this stuff because we know how it impacts on us. And maybe as leaders, we should think a little bit more about how can we use music to not only enhance our own performance, but also that of our teams. What tool we talk about all these tools we try, whether it be meditation, different focus exercises, but probably I suspect for most of us as leaders, music is an area we probably overlook.
Yeah, I agree. I think those people who do advocate listening to music while they work do it probably because they just think they enjoy it, or they think it's nice, or they think it helps them work better. But Andrew really delves into the science behind it, doesn't it? And there's some fascinating stuff he talks about that really made me think, actually, we could try that. And, using it in a not structured way, because then that makes it, far too laborious, but actually understand how we could use it to best effect. So, if we could have a chat around that, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, definitely. And I did learn something really interesting on the episode, Becky, which is he was very much talking about some of the latest science around music and learning to play music as a child and neuroplasticity. And I was reflecting on this and I thought, you know what? I'm no virtuoso. I'm not putting myself down here. I'm just not a virtuoso. But as a kid, I dabbled in guitar, recorder, organ, and I was in the school choir. So I look at that and I think, without realising how much of that stuff when I was between the ages of 6 and 12, how much did that lead to sort of neuroplasticity development for me as a human being? I can never A/B test it clearly now, but I look back and I think maybe that did have some impact on the way I think and how my brain fires and stuff. It probably does. So I haven't got kids. I think if I was about to have kids, learning off the back of that episode, I would definitely encourage them to just get involved in music and poetry, all this stuff which we know deals with left-right brain and the connectivity between the two. Yeah. I would really encourage, and maybe we could, who knows, maybe the research will show it even works as we get older as well. Perhaps we should have, we should start a Larkin Gowan music club, and we should, we all kind of start a band. We all pitch up with our organs and our guitars, and we just kind of learn instruments. It might help. Who knows? Anyway,
Who knows?
On a serious point, I think it is. We do need to talk around some of these points because they are really pertinent to us as leaders, and hopefully the other leaders listening today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first point that Andrew raised that really resonated with us is about how music can really impact on our learning and our concentration levels. And he talked about focus, didn't he? And how we can listen to music while we work or in our rest breaks, and which is most effective, what sort of music can be most effective. And it was fascinating to me that I mean, he starts from the premise of the best music is no music for concentration, or alternatively, if you're going to have noise, it's white noise or brown noise. Brown noise, I'm never quite sure what that means. Do you know what brown noise
I
means?
think I think it just depends on the hertz, doesn't it? I think I'm not entirely
Okay.
sure, but I certainly find for myself if I'm trying to really deeply concentrate on something, I just can't have music on around me. I find it distracting. So for me, that the research didn't surprise me at all. I can only base it on anecdotal evidence that I find. And if I'm listening to music before I do something, yeah, it can definitely affect my mood and my concentration. I really can see that. But during the act of doing it, then no, I just have to have silence. Otherwise, it's almost like my brain gets distracted. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how you find it, Becky.
I think I mean I have mixed views on this, because I think when we worked at home and so we didn't have any background noise, perhaps I would be fine in silence for quite some time, and then I'd find that my concentration level would slip, and that's probably an indication that actually I should have taken a break. But then I
Yeah,
would put music on just for some noise. And I also find that in the when I'm working in the office, if the teams are all head down and there's very little buzz going on, then sort of after about an hour I get a bit angsty, and I need a bit of energy, and I think that's really my brain telling me that I need to take a break and do something different. But I've all previously interpreted that as I just need some noise
yeah,
rather than actually downing tools and going and have a break. But yeah, I mean, if based on what Andrew said, silence is best for anything, best for cognitive state, isn't it? To get really maximize anything that you're doing cognitively. And then he said, if you are going to listen to something, then instrumental music would be the next best. Music with lyrics would decrease your effectiveness. And then finally, this is the bit that really interested me, music with lyrics that is going to have the biggest impact in terms of detrimental impact on your effectiveness if performing cognitive tasks. So, and that really, when you think about it, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because as soon as you hear a song, you kind of tune into it more almost.
yeah.
And you're not necessarily singing along, but your brain recognizes it. And music is so evoking of memory anyway, isn't it? And he touched on this, but honestly, you can hear a song, can't you? And it takes you straight back to where you were, that you really relate that to. And it always amazes me how we retain song lyrics. I can remember song lyrics from when I was like 12, and I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
So if I could just get some of that out of my brain, maybe that would give me a bit more space.
Is
But
that Agadoo for you?
no, probably more Aha or something. But he said basically music with lyrics that you recognise will impede your learning.
Yeah,
And if you think about why, that makes perfect sense to me.
yeah,
Because there's just too many narratives in your head, I guess.
definitely. And you think, like, if you've got the radio on and a song comes on that you like, you're like, oh, I like this song, and you turn the volume up. So clearly, if it's something you like, you're drawn towards it, aren't you? There's no doubt about it. But I think, as he was saying, if where music can be really useful is especially the white and brown background noise. If you're listening to it before you start to do a complex piece of cognitive work, and then during the breaks from doing that cognitive work, and I suppose really what this is coming down to is that the music clearly alters our own brain waves. And we've talked about brainwave manipulation on this show before when we had the episode on havening technique, Becky, and you were you were the guinea pig on that episode, and just the havening technique changed the brain waves, didn't it? It created the theta waves, I think, wasn't it, which really calms us down. It's almost like the sleep waves. So we know that various things can impact the brain waves, and the brain waves affects the state we're in. So this shouldn't come as a surprise, should it? So now we know this information as leaders. It's almost like, right, okay, what do we do? What do we do with it? What can we do with it as individuals, as leaders, and also as leaders of teams? What can we do to help with the teams? We sort of touched on it at the start. There's always been a bit of angst about, well, if people have got headphones in, is it affecting their concentration? What about if a colleague wants to talk to them? It means that actually they feel like they can't approach them. We very much talk in our business a lot around training by osmosis, just by sitting beside people, listening to what they're saying. So I think there's a balance here, isn't it? But it's almost like, how do we use this to the greater good? How do we use this for the team and the individual's advantage?
And I think for me, it's about understanding why you're listening to music rather than just doing it as a habit. So, like you say, if it's in breaks between tasks to refocus and to re-energize and you get your concentration back to where it needs to be before you start the next task, then that's great. But if it's just there as a sort of a background noise throughout the whole day, I'm not sure that's achieving what you might think it is. And I think that's the bit that's we've learned from this and that we can share with our teams, which is, actually using it to your benefit to really aid your concentration rather than impede it, and not just have it on in the background. And I think that's where having the radio on in the office or in a workplace can be such a challenging thing, isn't it? First of all, there's which station do you choose? I bet that causes loads of arguments in workplaces. But equally, it's just constant, isn't it? It's too easy to leave a radio on. It's not even an album that has a start and a finish or a playlist or something. So I think there's lots of things that we need to think about and sort of encourage our teams to think about, because I've heard people say, I concentrate so much better listening to music. And now I'd be like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the
do.
science doesn't really back it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really?
absolutely. Yeah, but I think, I mean, one of the,
Whereas,
I suppose the takeaway for me is I'd really like to, within our team, Becky, that we lead, I'd really like to experiment with people who want to be part of a trial almost. Well, let's try some 40 hertz background white brown noise before they do a task, and then during the task when they feel they need to have a cognitive break, or even a toilet break or whatever, just get AirPods, whatever they're called. What are they called?
AirPods. Well, that's Apple, I guess.
Yeah, I need.
Others are available.
Yeah, so you just got but we don't want everyone listening to it at the same time, because different people will be at different stages of their concentration cycle. So this needs to be very much plugged into yourself, not for wider audience, doesn't it? Unless we're all going to sit there and say, right, we're all going to listen to some white noise for 10 minutes, right? 3, 2, 1, start the task. Right, 30 minutes later, down tools. We're not going to do that in an office environment. It's going to be individual, isn't it? So maybe we could just do a trial of this to see, and it's going to be. I mean, clearly there's measurements we could take in terms of output, in terms of how quickly a job got done, to what level, accuracy, etc. Some of this will be subjective, how the individual feels as well. So we could do some quantitative and qualitative like tests off the back of it. And I think it'd be really interesting to do a control group where we do it with and the other group we don't, and just see if there are any measurable differences, just to see if it does have an impact, because we all chase this holy grail of improved productivity, but I bet we've never tried this before. Do you know what I mean? This could be a constituent part of productivity improvement for business.
It could, and the science is there, isn't it? It is all based on frequency, firing those neurons, getting the right frequencies at the right time. Like you say, like most things, it's about being conscious, isn't it? So if you're just listening to music because it's a habit, that's probably not aiding you at all. And in fact, sometimes you're probably not even hearing it anyway. But if we really want to get the benefits, I completely agree. I think we should have a trial. That would be great. And we could dispel all these myths that people who are sitting there with their headphones on are just, unsociable and don't want to talk to anyone.
And what we now know is they really only need their headphones on before they start the task, and then at breaks during the task, not all the while it's on, which then gets over the other hurdle, which is, well, what about if somebody wants to approach them? What about if, someone wants to ask them a question and they feel a bit intimidated going up to them? We also get over that because the team understand actually when they've got the headphones on, it's actually because they are doing it to boost their concentration levels and their learning and concentration around the task they're doing. So it's almost like this is quality time. Don't disturb them while they're actually doing this, because it's a really important part of the process.
Yeah. That'd be so good, wouldn't it? We could be running experiments in the office. We're going to be our own lab.
Yeah, so I think we should try that, and then we can report back to the listeners what our anecdotal results are. And also, if any of the listeners try this, feedback as well. We'd love to hear what your results are and how you got on with it.
Yeah, it'd be really good, wouldn't it? There was just one thing that Andrew talked about that just fascinated me. It's about retention of info, because we listen to the words when we read. In our head, we are saying the words, he was saying. And he said we are like one neuron. I'm going to get the science wrong, but like one neuron short of saying the words out loud, because our brain is sending the messages to our larynx and our pharynx. but we're not actually vocalizing them.
Yeah.
And he said that's why when some people read, their lips move, because that's their brain basically processing the information. And when you think about it like that, you think, well, then listening to music with lyrics is just too much noise. It's too much literal narrative going on in your head, isn't it? So of course that's not going to help. So anyway, that was the bit that
and you know,
I'm not geeky and I'm not scientific.
but isn't it interesting how that kind of like that's the way our brains are processing? And I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but when you talk to certain people, when you're talking to them and they're clearly processing what you're saying to them, their lips move. And I can get away with this because I know she doesn't listen to the podcast. My mother-in-law, right? My mother-in-law does this, and I've always wondered, like, it's like I'm talking to her and her lips start moving. Like she's like she's having internal chatter. What I'm saying to her, she's not trying to respond. She's thinking it through, isn't she? And then her lips are moving like she's trying to talk, but she's not. So I've seen this happen when you talk to people, which must be the same principle, I guess.
It must be, mustn't it? But it's just fascinating, isn't it? Your brain is like one whatever away from you actually saying it out loud. It's sending all the signals apart from that final bit, and that's why your lips move. So now you know. It's scientific. People can't, they can't stop this stuff. It's just the way they're wired. Great. So we're going to run an experiment with our people. I'm not sure how they'll feel about being our guinea pigs, but I think it'd be good.
We can ask for willing volunteers.
Volunteers, in inverted commas, absolutely. So clearly lots we can do there to really consciously use music or noise of some sort to perhaps aid our concentration and learning. Moving on, the second thing we took away from Andrew's podcast that we really wanted to explore is how music can boost motivation. Really leads on quite nicely from that, isn't there? There's the taking breaks and listening to music that really sort of, I think he said music that you like and know will be the most beneficial to use in your rest breaks because it gets your brain back into the state to then learn. But equally for motivating you, particularly, I guess, the examples he used with physical exercise, which I think a lot of people will resonate with, because a lot of people do have music when they exercise, don't they? They do listen to when they're running or whatever. But I know, Mark, you don't find that works for you, do you?
No, I've really struggled listening to music when I run, and I think it's because I find myself running to the cadence of the music, the beats in the music, and it affects my stride pattern that I want to run at. It really, I suppose I just get connected to the music is what happens. In the same way as like you were saying about how it's one neuron away from coming out of speech, it obviously has an impact on like my physiology. So I listen to podcasts when I run. It's the only way I can really manage my stride patterns. So I do get that, but it's interesting. I was thinking about this, Becky, and an episode that we recorded very recently, we were talking about energy and how you kind of like energize yourself. And we talked about Tony Robbins, and when he comes out on stage, the music's pumping, he's bouncing up and down on the trumpet. Yeah. And I think this comes back to this, doesn't it? Which is in that instance, he's trying to get the blood flowing, he's trying to get himself motivated, he's getting the right chemicals, he's getting the room motivated as well. So I think there is, and you think about sporting events, there's always some kind of decent music with a fairly up tempo beat when the teams come on the pitch. And most sport, whether it be football, rugby, ones where they're trying to get the crowd motivated and the players motivated as well. And again, it's always music, isn't it? So you think, well, we see this all around us. If we open our eyes and look around, we see this happening, and it's not just about the spectacle. It's happening for a reason, I suspect.
It is, and a boxing match is a classic, isn't it? You know, when they come out. I'm not a fan myself, but I've seen it. And they have their song, and everyone knows it's theirs. And even darts players, don't they have their song that the crowd will then know? And and I've often thought, it's just to get the crowd going, but I don't think it is. I think it's the whole, like you say, it's for the players as well, isn't it? So it can have such a motivating effect. I'm interested in what you said about not listening to music when you run. That's not your preference because it affects your stride. You can get playlists which are specific cadence, can't you? So that there's specific beats to suit your running style. Years ago I used to run. I used to find those. I don't run. I tend to do spin, which, stationary bike, and a lot of that is based around cadence and the beat of the music. So you need that aspect because that's what gives you the rhythm for the movements, etc., and increasing resistance. So it's very interesting how different sports perhaps play. That's a play on words, literally. Different sports and different styles will suit music or not. But the point that Andrew was talking about, which really interested me, was he said that if you listen to music that you like in the breaks between your exercise, so if you're doing sets of weights or something, in the breaks in between, and then not when you're actually doing the physical exertion, that will really motivate you to be physically better. So you will achieve more in the periods when you are exercising. So whether that's listening to music before you go on a long run, or like I say, in between sets of weights, was the example that he gave, I think, which I found really interesting, because I get it's very individual. It's going to be very individual for people, that whether it does motivate you or not when you're engaged in physical exertion. But it can, I think it can really enhance performance, and the science certainly seems to back that up, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think he was basically saying that the science is showing, as long as it's over 140 beats per minute is sort of the average cadence of the song. It doesn't matter what the music is particularly. It's more the speed of the music which drives the motivation. So as we know from the long suffering listeners to the show, I do have a preference for heavy metal, and maybe that's why I've just been so motivated through my career, Becky, because of the type of music I listen to.
Do you listen to that before every meeting? I'm going to do this. That's interesting, actually. So would you listen to, if you're in the car in the morning going to something, would you listen to that sort of music, or would you be more inclined to listen to something more gentle, or perhaps a podcast? Or
it's funny, isn't it? I was thinking about that actually when I used to present the business breakfasts, which we used to do to business owners. I had to. It's funny. I because I probably felt in a heightened state, because I'm going to go and present to 100 people or whatever it was, and the adrenaline was already starting to build. I'd always either had silence, I had no radio on at all driving to the venue, or I'd have something really mellow, because it was almost like I had enough natural motivational chemicals pulsing through my veins. I didn't need to add. If I'd have added to the mix, I would have burnt out before I'd even done the presentation. So I always felt like I had to.
Gosh.
I guess I used music to try and temper what was going on. I had to just try to bring it down a notch or two.
Yeah, I get that. Gosh, you would have been unbearable. You would have just exploded onto the stage. Yeah, I think you did the right thing there.
But again, it shows, doesn't it, that science can tell us one thing, but we very much intuitively know what works for us and when. Other times, if you're feeling a bit kind of lackluster and you put some quicker music on, it probably starts to get those chemicals released in your system, and it's starting to work, isn't it? And you're getting yourself built up for what is. So you're about to come out on a field to play a game or something, or the equivalent in business. You're not quite feeling it. You just need to get into the right kind of physiological state for it. If you recognise that maybe you're already in a slightly heightened state anyway, you need to do something to manage the levels. So I think we know this stuff intuitively. So it's not saying all the while, if you want to feel more motivated, put 140 beat music on, because actually you might already be feeling motivated and you don't want to kind of overkill it. Maybe I think we know this stuff intuitively. But what I would question is, have I used music at the right times enough to help with motivation, rather than just saying, come on, Mark, you can do it. Like, come on, got to get up for this meeting. Come on, you can do it. Maybe I could have just played a bit of music and it would have had exactly the same effect or a better effect. But maybe that's what I've missed out on through some of my career.
And I think, like most things, and as we've already said, it is about using the music consciously to aid you, isn't it? Rather than just flicking the radio on and just letting whatever play over you. If you actually consciously think about, what sort of music do I need at the moment for the situation that I'm in or I'm about to go into, it can just have such a positive effect. So again, it's don't let things happen without considering how you could get the most benefit out of them, I guess. It can feel quite lazy, can't it, to just flick the radio on in the car or something and just let someone else choose what you listen to.
Yeah, and it's nice sometimes if you're just wanting to...
Sometimes.
But not if you're trying to use it.
No, exactly. So you do need to take those steps to actually find the right music for the circumstances, or not no music if that's the
Yeah,
case. But yeah,
yeah,
really
definitely.
interesting how it can motivate, and
And
how subjective it is, I think, is what we're saying.
yeah, and nowadays, it's so easy, isn't it? Back when we were, and I know Andrew talked about this as well. Back when we were kids, we had like sort of personal cassette players, didn't we? Which you just couldn't select the music very readily. It was like you just had to listen to what came on. Where now you can put playlists. You can, even if you got your phone with you and you got a signal, you can just bang YouTube on. Even if you haven't got any music on your phone, you could pick a specific song. So it's all at our fingertips, isn't it? So this stuff is so easy now to do as well.
Yeah. And actually, if you're really into this and you're keen to find those tracks that are of the certain beats per minute that he was talking about, things like that, then they're listed as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
It's all out there. It's all accessible for us. We can create these playlists for the precise reasons that we, want the real benefit from the music. So it's definitely possible. The third thing that we really wanted to chat around, which I think probably again fairly obvious to us all, we all know this, but that music can really influence our mood. But again, it's about how we do that when we need to, if we're not in a great place, could we use music to help ourselves? Or why does some music make us happy? And we were chatting about this before we hit record, weren't we, Mark, about the whole one hit wonder thing, which was really interesting about how one hit wonders are rarely sad songs. They're usually happy songs. They can have lyrics that make no sense whatsoever, often party songs, things like that, usually in a major key, 140 to 150 BPM. There's a reason why they're such hits, but often, we can't really quite explain it, can we? But they do have that instant effect on us.
absolutely. Yeah, and equally, you can think of, I don't know, you think of songs which are maybe a bit depressing. And the one for me was always Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks. Oh, it is like the
Ooh.
most depressing song I've ever heard. And it just makes me feel like really low when I listen to it. And also it's interesting. I was thinking about this as well. I'm going back to some like classic, like probably 1960s and stuff. But you had the Animals, House of the Rising Sun, and I think that's played in like sharp. I think I think, not being obviously a very skilled musician, I think they use a lot of sharp notes in it, because I can remember having to play it on the keyboard when I was a kid, and it's got quite a harsh edge to it. And whilst it's a great song, it's not uplifting. So you kind of, again, we intuitively know this stuff when we hear them. We can tell when something's
Yeah.
more jolly, can't we? It just resonates with us. So I think just listening to music to help, just as a little pick me up, to just have a mood booster. We all know the songs
Yeah.
probably that we have on our playlist, which just give us that little boost, don't we?
And I think as well, he was talking about consciously moving yourself from one state to another, isn't it? So if you're in a
Mm.
neutral state, how could you move to a positive state if you're feeling sad? But then what did interest me, and I see this, and we've all done this probably, that if you're feeling sad because something's happened to you, there can be a tendency, particularly teenage heartbreak or something, where you wallow in the sad songs, don't you? And you really kind of immerse yourself into it. And on his podcast, Andrew was saying, actually, that's not a bad thing, because to work through that, immerse yourself in that for a period of time and feel the feelings, can be quite a positive thing,
Mm.
as long as you do come out of it the other side. But I think we all know that sometimes that sort of music might appeal to us because it just kind of almost makes us feel like, yeah, I can stay here for a little while, I can stay in this place. But then otherwise, a different sort of music will shift us out of it,
Mm.
hopefully, and help us to get past it.
Yeah.
But again, very, very subjective.
But again, you think, sort of putting a real business spin on it. I don't know. Let's say some of the team come in and they've got sort of a bit of the old Monday morning blues. It's like, they're not really, they're not in the best frame of mind. It's Monday morning and whatever, and that potentially has quite a long tail to it through a Monday, which means they're maybe not on it. They're not as productive as they'd like to be. What about if we said to people, if you've got the Monday morning blues and you feel your mood is just not where you want it to be, just take 10 minutes, stick your earphones in, and just listen to some up-tempo music just to kind of alter your state of mind. Give them 10 minutes to do
Yeah.
that. how much more productive do you think that and happier that individual might be for the other 7 hours and 20 minutes compared to if you didn't invest that 10 minutes? Again, it's an interesting thought, isn't it? We all think, well, in our business, it's 7.5 hours a day. Could you get better value, not in a negative way, but for the individual as well, because they're feeling in a better place and they're giving better customer service. They're engaging with their colleagues in a better way because they're feeling better. You just think, again, could we use music as a real antidote to, say, a Monday morning blues, for example?
I think we could. And I think as individuals, we've also got a responsibility probably to recognise if we do have a tendency to that, and to use our time, I don't know, travelling to work to find the music perhaps that is going to get us to the state that we need to be in to be as productive as we can be. So as leaders, we can absolutely help our teams with that. But as individuals, let's do what we say, basically. Don't do as I do as I say, but actually do it, and recognise that, I know that if I listen to music that's not upbeat driving into work, it doesn't put me in the right space. It really doesn't. I do need that energy, that that lively, that beat, I guess, which comes back to what Andrew was saying in terms of activating the neurons. And I think it's to get you into the state. And again, I'd never thought about it particularly in terms of, the science of why it is. It's just, I thought it was just how I was, but it makes sense, doesn't it?
And I wonder how much of this is linked. I mean, we did a podcast pretty much at the start of when we started Impromptu Business Chat, and it was based around the 3 things you can do as a mood improver, and one of them is like by smiling, your body automatically produces serotonin. So even if it's not a real smile, if it's a pretend smile, the mere act of activating those muscles produces serotonin in our bodies. If we start laughing, then we produce endorphins and oxytocin. So endorphins probably get released mainly when we deep breathe. So if we belly breathe rather than chest breathe, which most of the world don't anymore, we all chest breathe and we shallow breathe. No. If we get our posture right and we open our lungs up so they plunge down, that releases endorphins. So I was thinking when I was listening to this about music, when I listen to happy music, I probably smile more. Definitely changes my facial expression. So I'm smiling. So is it actually the music which is having the impact on my body, or is it the fact that maybe I'm smiling when I'm listening to the music? I probably don't laugh when I listen to music, but it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about and we got talking about Peter Kay, the very well-known British comedian. And the guy said, I went to see him at the O2 Arena in London once. He said, and I have never laughed so much in my life. This guy said to me, I've never taken drugs, Mark, but when I came out of the O2 Arena after an hour and a half of laughing, I felt high as a kite. And it's because he had endorphin release, he had oxytocin release. And, you think maybe music and just the mere fact of smiling and laughing, it's all linked together, isn't it? It's all this chemical release, like feel-good chemicals, which have a positive impact on us.
So when I'm singing along at top volume in my car to some upbeat music, I guess that's a similar effect, isn't it? Because I'm having to take in more air.
You're deep breathing,
that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I completely agree with the guy you were talking to about if you go and see a comedian, you come out and you're high on it because it's just brilliant. You forget how much of an effect it has.
We need soundproof rooms where people can go in and belt out a song at the top of their lungs without impacting on their colleagues.
God, it would need to be soundproof.
We could have Monday morning motivational Monday office karaoke. Maybe that's the way it needs to go.
Do you think?
No.
Well, but most people. Well, some people need a little bit of alcohol to go up and do karaoke. That's the trouble. We're not going to advocate that.
Not on a Monday morning. Absolutely.
It's funny, isn't it? Singing in the car, you think you're invisible and that no one can hear you. And then you walk past someone else's car and they're on the phone to someone. You're thinking, I can hear everything. So I'm like, maybe they can hear me. But that's not a bad thing. It's not that bad.
Well, and yet again, we come back to Peter Kay, don't we? Was it Car Share? Was it what the programme was called? Where he's belting out that song at the traffic lights, The Voice by, I can't remember what the guy's name is who sang the song. And the other guy's just looking at him through the car. John somebody, isn't it? Yeah. And he's looking at Peter Kay like just laughing. Yeah. We've all been there and done that.
course we have.
So how did we got from music to Peter Kay?
I don't know, seamless as ever. And apparently it doesn't take, you don't have to listen to music for very long to boost your happiness. It's 3 minutes, Andrew said.
Wow.
Just think what effect we could have, you know, whether it's happiness, positive attitude, you know, all of that, just to lift our mood from one state to the next in a positive way. 3 minutes out of our day in a morning,
Nothing,
like you say,
is it?
Monday morning. It's nothing, is it? So
No.
I think we should definitely give this a go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we use music for entertainment, but clearly there's a lot more to music that we can use it for our benefit.
Yeah, I really think it has. So we've talked around 3 areas there that particularly resonated with us from Andrew's podcast. There was a lot more in his podcast, a lot, and a lot of science that we haven't done justice at all. Mark's much better at the terminology than I am. So just to recap on those 3 things, really, it's about how you can use music to really boost your learning and concentration, and actually perhaps silence or the white or brown noise is better for that state, but again, it can be very subjective, but just being aware of whether it is actually affecting your concentration or not, I think is the most important thing, and then finding the things that will benefit you. The second thing we talked around was how music can motivate us. So that's either sort of in physical exercise or going into, you know, meetings or situations that we really need to be performing at our best, and how, again, we can utilize it to really aid us in that way. And then the third thing, which I think, you know, everyone will resonate with in terms of the impact music can have on us, is how it can affect our mood and how we can probably use it to help ourselves shift from one state to the next, and perhaps lift ourselves at the times that we might need it, or, you know, recognizing ourselves where it might be of real value to us, just to give us that boost. So lots to think about, Mark, and lots that we can put into practice with the teams, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I won't impose heavy metal as the only fast music that they can listen to. I'll give them a choice.
No, I think that is slightly extreme. Do you think? You'll let them have choice. That's very generous of you. And who knows? We might actually shift our view on whether listening to music in the office or in the workplace is a positive thing. We won't be quite so black and white about, are you someone that listens to music while you work, or aren't you? So we really would recommend that you look out for Andrew Huberman's podcast on this via the Huberman Lab is the name of his podcast. There's loads of great stuff there. We'll include the links to that in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you've really enjoyed the show. If so, please rate us and like us, follow us, all of those things on your chosen platform. It really helps other people find us. Thank you to our sponsors, Larkin Gowan. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. The link to their website will be in the show notes. Please have a look and see how their chartered accountants and business advisors can help you and your business. So that's all from us for this week, and that just leaves us to say have a great week, and please don't forget to boost your health, wealth and self.